Okay, welcome back, Oklahoma. 9/11 is your time, and every month we check in with Oklahoma's congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. for an update that'll impact you all here at home. And this morning we have with us U.S. Congressman Tom Cole. He's in studio right now. Congressman Cole, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start with some of these topics here. You just announced that you're planning on running for the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. Talk to us about this decision on why you decided to throw your name into the hat here.
Well, to be fair, I already was running. The current chair was retiring at the end of this Congress. But after we passed the appropriations bills last week, she made the decision to step down early. Kay Granger's her name. She's from Texas, good friend of mine. I'm her co-chairman of the committee, vice chairman, excuse me. But she said, look, I want whoever starts the negotiations to be here to finish the negotiation. That might not be the case since I'm leaving early, so I'm going to leave early and open it up. And I was already in the process of running, so it just accelerated that.
And you said in the statement that you released that you're the best person for this job. Talk more about just...
Well, whenever you run for something, you ought to believe you're the best person.
You want to put yourself out there, the best
yeah,
foot forward.
Look, I've been chairman of the largest domestic spending. I'm the second most senior member of the Defense Subcommittee, which is over half discretionary spending. I've headed up two other subcommittees. I've been, again, the vice chairman of the committee. So I know the committee extremely well. Most of the other subcommittee chairman, there's 12 subcommittees on appropriations. 10 of them are supporting me, so that's a pretty good place to start. So my colleagues that actually do the work are very supportive of me becoming the next chairman, and we just keep working it. There's about 30 people on the steering committee. I'm actually one of those that make the decision. It looks pretty good right now.
All right, so let's switch here to the southern border now.
Sure.
I do want to talk about this House resolution that you've shown support for earlier this month. It denounces the Biden administration's immigration policies, but I just want to talk more about what that piece of legislation, what does it exactly call for?
Well, actually, it just details all the decisions that the president has made that reverse the Trump decisions, that if he would change his mind and reinstate the policies that we're working would get us back to where we're going. The really important piece of legislation is what the House actually passed last year. It's called H.R. 2. It's the strongest border security bill in American history. We did that within 4 months of the Republican majority, so it passed in May of last year. We sent it to the Senate and hadn't even gotten a hearing yet. Now, they don't have to agree with us, but they should pick up the bill that passed the House of Representatives, change it if they want, and we could get in a dialogue. But the Senate, Democratic Senate, has been very unserious about border security. Honestly, the president has created this. This is very much a man-made, Biden-made disaster on the southern border. He's taken 94 different actions by executive order, ending the Remain in Mexico policy of the Trump administration, which would have required you have to stay there until your status is adjudicated in our courts. You can't just come across and be released. Ending or allowing what's called catch and release. We used to hold people if they came in illegally. Now we just release them with a court date in a couple of years. And ending the construction of the wall, which we now know was very effective and needed to be expanded. So those were all things the president did on his own. They made the problem exponentially worse. We're calling on him to reverse his decisions and simply redo what he undid.
And that's H.R. 2, right?
That's right. H.R. 2 would be the basic legislation. The resolution is a resolution by the House of Representatives to call on him to actually reverse his action. So it's an effort to build some public pressure on him and remind people who started this. I mean, who created this problem? It's the Biden administration. It's the president specifically himself.
So that legislation seemingly stuck in the Senate right now. Where
Actually,
do you go?
Well, the resolution will pass because it's a simple statement of the House's opinion. So that's done. The bill, again, we're just calling on the Senate to take it up. We're not saying you have to pass exactly what we did, but pick up the bill. The Senate hasn't been able to produce anything on the border. They tried, they failed. So since they haven't been able to pass a bill, maybe they should pick up a bill that's already passed the House, make whatever changes they want, and then we'll get in a negotiation. But again, they don't want to do that. We've been right on this issue all along. The president and the Democratic Senate has been wrong, and frankly, they just simply don't want to admit they're wrong and reverse the direction that they've gone in.
Well, let's talk about another bill that's heading to the Senate right now, just passed out of the House, surrounding TikTok.
Yeah.
I do want to talk to you about, this is a bill that is looking to separate the company that it's associated right now, looking to put in place an American company in that place. But I do want to ask you, what are your concerns surrounding this app and its impact on Americans?
Well, we've had intelligence briefings. The parent company actually has members of the Chinese Communist Party at the highest level, the Politburo as it's called, sitting on its board. And under Chinese law, all the information that a company like TikTok gathers, since it's owned by a Chinese company, has to be available to Chinese intelligence. We know that journalists have been tracked on TikTok. We know that, honestly, propaganda has been spewed into our system. We have 170 million American users of this app. Frankly, in China, they don't allow any foreign platforms to have this kind of control. So what we did was actually just pass a legislation, didn't shut down TikTok. It was said the parent company needs to be replaced by an American company. So you can sell it. We're not trying to confiscate it, but we're not going to allow a foreign adversary. And we actually listed not only China, but we listed Russia, North Korea, and Iran as well. They're not going to be allowed to own, platforms that disseminate information that honestly is aimed at influencing and corrupting and aimed at surveillance. We're not going to allow them to develop databases on 170 million Americans that can be used later to blackmail them. So I think it's very bipartisan. Every single member of the committee that reported this out, Democrat and Republican, it came out 50-0. It passed with gigantic majorities on both sides of the aisle. So this is something that people that normally disagree look at the intelligence and say, this is a threat to American security. We need to act on it. The House did. We hope the Senate will.
U.S. Congressman Tom Cole, thank you so much for coming in. Hope to have you back here in studio with us again. I know you've been busy out here in Oklahoma during your trip. You're going back to D.C. for some more work, but thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right.